The giant meeting hall on Nexus Prime felt cold and empty, even with representatives from 17 different alien worlds sitting inside. Ambassador Kyun-woo from the Talon sector stood at the center, his hands shaking slightly as he looked at the faces staring back at him. Some had eyes, some had crystals for heads, and others looked like floating gas clouds. But they all had one thing in common. They didn't want to help. Kyun-woo pressed a button and images appeared in the air above him. Dead worlds, brown, lifeless soil that used to grow food for billions of people, empty cities where children once played. The pictures made him feel sick, but he had to show them. Friends from across the galaxy, he began, his voice echoing in the huge room. The disease we call the Blight has killed every farm on 43 worlds in our sector. Our people are starving. Our children cry for food we don't have. A tall lizard-like creature called Vrex clicked his sharp claws on the table. He was from the Keth Empire, one of the most powerful groups in the galaxy. How is this our problem? Every species must take care of itself. Kyun-woo felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting mad wouldn't feed his people. We've tried everything. Our best scientists can't figure out what's causing the blight. It turns good soil into dust overnight. We've used up all our emergency food. Our old people have stopped eating so the children can have their small meals. A being made of living crystals spoke next. Its voice sounded like breaking glass. The Vorthak Collective has sent some food pills. That should be enough. Enough? Kyun-woo couldn't hide his shock. Your food pills will feed maybe a few thousand people for a few days. We have billions who are dying. Our children are getting so thin you can see their bones, the gas cloud being floated higher. The Zephyrian Union offers scientific support. We will send 3 researchers to study your soil problem. Kyun-woo wanted to scream. 3 researchers? When entire worlds were dying? He looked around the room and saw the same thing in every alien face. They simply didn't care enough to really help. They would give tiny bits of aid so they could say they tried, but none of them wanted to spend real resources on saving his people. Please, Kyun-woo said, and he didn't care that his voice cracked. In 6 months, our entire civilization will collapse. Billions will die, not from war or disease, but from hunger. Simple hunger. Something that could be stopped if we just had food. Breck stood up, his scales making a scraping sound. Perhaps you should have been more careful with your farming worlds. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Species that can't survive deserve to die. The words hit Kyun-woo like a physical blow. He looked around the room again and saw nods from many of the representatives. They actually believed that his people deserved to starve because they couldn't stop a mysterious disease. Just then, his assistant Yoonji hurried up to him. She was young, barely out of school, but she was the smartest person he knew. She whispered something in his ear that made his eyes go wide. Wait, Kyun-woo said loudly. I've just received a message from Earth. The humans want to speak with us. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about humans, but they were still new to galactic politics. They had only joined the big community of space-traveling species about 50 years ago. Most aliens thought they were primitive because they came from a single world, instead of controlling multiple star systems. Yoonji handed him a small device. Kyun-woo pressed a button and suddenly a human face appeared in the air. It was a woman with kind eyes and gray hair. She looked tired, like she had been working for days without sleep. Ambassador Kyun-woo, the human said. My name is Director Mina Chen from Earth's Agricultural Council. We received your emergency broadcast about the famine in your sector. Kyun-woo felt a small spark of hope. Director Chen, we are grateful for any help Earth can provide. Even small amounts of food would save lives. The human woman smiled, but it was a strange smile. It reminded Kyun-woo of how his grandfather used to smile when he was about to surprise the family with something wonderful. Ambassador, we're not offering small amounts of food. We're offering to feed everyone in your sector until your worlds can grow food again, and we're offering to fix the blight problem permanently. The entire meeting hall exploded with noise. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. Some were laughing, thinking it was a joke. Others were angry that a young species like humanity would make such a big claim. Vrex slammed his claws on the table. Impossible. Humans barely have space travel. How could they feed billions of beings across dozens of worlds? Director Chen's image turned to look at the lizard alien. Because, Counselor Vrex, while your people were building bigger weapons and conquering more planets, my people were learning how to grow food anywhere, anytime, for anyone. We've been preparing for this moment our entire history, even though we didn't know it. She looked back at Kyun-woo. Ambassador, Earth's harvest fleet will arrive in your sector in 72 hours. Every single person will be fed. Every single child will have enough to eat. Every single world will bloom again. This is humanity's promise to you. The image disappeared, leaving the meeting hall in total silence. Yunji leaned close to Kyun-woo. Sir, do you think they can really do it? Feed everyone? Kyun-woo looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. For the first time in months, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. I don't know, he whispered back. But right now, they're the only ones who even want to try. As he walked out of the meeting hall, Kyun-woo thought about the human woman's eyes. There had been something in them that he hadn't seen in any of the other aliens. It wasn't pity or duty or political calculation. It was something much simpler and much more powerful. It was the look of someone who genuinely cared that people were hungry, and who was willing to do whatever it took to make sure they got fed. For the first time in months, Kyun-woo allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, his people might survive after all. Admiral Bo-ra Kim stood on the bridge of the biggest ship humanity had ever built. The UES Abundance stretched for almost 10 kilometers from front to back, but it wasn't built for war. Every part of the massive vessel was designed for one purpose: growing and delivering food to anyone who needed it. Around her, hundreds of crew members worked at computer stations that monitored the largest relief operation in galactic history. On the main screen, she could see 300 ships just like hers spreading out across space, each one loaded with enough food to feed entire planets. Commander Jamin, give me a status report, she ordered. A tall man with serious eyes looked up from his station. He had fought in Earth's asteroid mining wars when pirates tried to steal humanity's space rocks. Now he was using those same organizational skills to coordinate the biggest food delivery ever attempted. Admiral, all harvest ships are ready to go. The Prosperity has enough grain in her cargo holds to feed 50 million people for a whole year. The Bounty has protein labs that can make artificial meat faster than any factory on Earth. Every single ship carries not just emergency food, but everything needed to start new farms on dead worlds. Bo-ra nodded and looked at the other person she had called to the bridge. Dr. Hai-Jin Park was Earth's best expert on alien plants and soil. She was a small woman who looked like she would be more comfortable in a garden than on a warship, but she had solved more agricultural problems than anyone alive. Doctor, what do we know about this blight that's killing their crops? Hai-Jin pulled up images on her tablet. Admiral, I've studied the samples they sent us. This isn't a natural disease. Someone made it. It's designed to attack specific bacteria that most alien farming depends on. The good news is that Earth's soil bacteria are completely different. We can not only feed them, we can cure their worlds. Bo-ra felt a cold anger in her stomach. Someone did this on purpose? Someone made a weapon that starves entire planets? Yes, ma'am. And whoever did it was very smart about it. They knew that most galactic civilizations use similar farming methods. But they never studied Earth agriculture. They have no idea what we're capable of. The Admiral looked out at the fleet of ships surrounding them. Each one was painted white and green, with symbols of wheat and rice and corn on their sides. They looked peaceful, almost friendly, but Bo-ra knew they carried the most advanced farming technology in the galaxy. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Su-jin from the communications station, we're getting messages from Earth. Agricultural volunteers from every continent want to join the mission. We have farmers from Korea offering to teach alien crops to grow in new soil. We have food scientists from Brazil who think they can adapt their protein synthesis methods to alien biology. There are so many volunteers that we can't fit them all on the ships. Bo-ra smiled. This was the part of humanity that made her most proud. When people were suffering somewhere in the universe, humans didn't ask about politics or trade agreements or what they would get in return. They just asked how they could help. Send a message back to Earth, she said. Tell all the volunteers that every single one of them will get their chance to help. We're not just delivering food. We're starting a permanent agricultural support system. No one in this galaxy should ever go hungry again when Earth has surplus food to share. Commander Jamin looked up from his station again. Admiral, we're ready to engage quantum drives. Estimated arrival time in the Talon sector is 72 hours. Make it 60 hours, Bo-ra said. Every minute we delay, people are going hungry. As the massive fleet prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Bo-ra thought about the first time she had seen images of the starving aliens. Children with big eyes and thin bodies, old people lying quietly in beds because they were too weak to stand. Parents giving their own food to their kids and pretending they weren't hungry. It reminded her of stories her grandmother used to tell about the famines on Earth, back before humanity learned how to grow food anywhere. Her grandmother always ended those stories the same way. Never again. No one should ever have to watch their children starve. Dr. Park, Bora said, I want you to prepare something special for when we arrive. Not just basic nutrition, but real food. The kind that makes people remember why life is worth living. Hyejin smiled. I've been working on that, Admiral. We have cultural food specialists studying every species in the Talon sector. We're going to give them meals that taste like home, even if they've never been to our world. The quantum drives hummed to life, and space around the fleet began to shimmer. In a few seconds, they would disappear from Earth's solar system and reappear near the dying worlds of the Talon sector. Ma'am, Su-Jin called out. We're getting one more message from Earth. It's from the Global Agriculture Council. Put it on screen. An elderly man appeared on the main display. Bora recognized him as Secretary General Park Min-ho, the person in charge of feeding Earth's 12 billion people. Admiral Kim, he said, I want you to know that every farm on Earth is working extra shifts to support your mission. Every greenhouse, every lab, every food processing plant is running at maximum capacity. We're sending you our best, but if you need more, just ask. Earth will not let these people starve. The transmission ended just as the quantum jump began. Bora felt the familiar sensation of space bending around them, and then they were gone. 60 hours later, they would arrive in a sector where billions of people were slowly dying of hunger. But they wouldn't be empty-handed. They would bring the full agricultural might of humanity, not as conquerors or traitors, but as friends who couldn't stand to see anyone go hungry. Commander Jaemin, Bora said as the stars streaked past them in quantum space, send a message ahead to Ambassador Kyun-woo. Tell him help is coming. Tell him that as long as there are humans in the galaxy, no one will starve alone. As the harvest fleet raced through space toward the dying worlds, Bora thought about what they were really doing. Other species had tried to help with small amounts of food or scientific research, but humanity was bringing something completely different. They were bringing abundance, not just enough food to survive, but enough to live, to grow, to hope for the future. And they were bringing it to strangers who had never done anything for Earth, simply because those strangers were hungry and had asked for help. That, Bora thought, was what made humanity special in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations. Not better weapons or faster ships, but the simple belief that no one should go to bed hungry if someone else had food to share. Captain Dong-Su felt his stomach drop as his ship, the UES Genesis, came out of quantum jump near the planet Kalar 7. He had expected to see some refugee ships, maybe a few dozen vessels carrying people who had fled the dying worlds. Instead, space around the planet was packed with hundreds of ships. They weren't military vessels or cargo haulers. These were civilian ships, passenger liners, mining transports, even personal family craft, all overloaded with refugees from the starving worlds. Some of the ships looked like they were barely holding together, patched with whatever materials their crews could find. Captain, Lieutenant Su-Jin called from her communications station. I'm getting emergency broadcasts from at least 300 ships. They're all asking for food, medical supplies, or both. Dong-Su looked at the main screen showing all the desperate ships floating in space. Some had been there for weeks, their crews surviving on emergency rations that had run out days ago. Others had just arrived, carrying the last evacuees from worlds where the soil had completely died. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered. Su-Jin nodded. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Dong-Su of the Terran harvest ship Genesis. We're here to help. All vessels needing immediate food assistance, please form orderly lines and prepare to receive supply shuttles. No one will be turned away. The response was immediate chaos. Hundreds of voices started broadcasting at once in dozens of different languages. Some were crying, some were shouting with joy. Others were begging in words Dong-Su couldn't understand but whose meaning was clear. Sir, Commander In-ho said from the logistics station. At current supply rates, it would take us 3 weeks to feed everyone here. Dong-Su smiled. Commander, you're thinking too small. Begin Operation Cornucopia. I want every person fed within 12 hours. In-ho's eyes went wide. Sir, that's never been tested on this scale. Then today we find out if it works. Execute the operation. The Genesis began to transform. What had looked like a simple cargo ship revealed its true nature. Massive panels opened along the hull, exposing cargo bays the size of city blocks. But these weren't empty storage areas. They were fully operational hydroponic farms. Rows and rows of growing vegetables stretched as far as the eye could see. Automated systems that had been quietly working during the journey began harvesting tomatoes, lettuce, beans, and dozens of other crops. Protein synthesis labs started producing artificial meat that smelled and tasted exactly like the real thing. Dr. Na Young, the ship's cultural food specialist, worked with the culinary artificial intelligence to adapt human recipes for alien biology. She had spent months studying the dietary needs of every species in the Talon sector. "Captain," she reported, "we're packaging meals that are not just nutritionally complete but culturally appropriate. The Keth warriors are getting spiced grain cakes that taste like their traditional war bread. The Vorthak crystal beings are receiving mineral supplements that enhance their natural glow." Shuttle after shuttle launched from the Genesis, each one carrying enough food to feed thousands of beings. But this wasn't just basic nutrition paste or survival rations. These were real meals, prepared with care and designed to remind people of home. On one of the refugee ships, a Keth mother named Hannah held her young son as a human shuttle docked with their vessel. The little boy hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 weeks. When the human food arrived, Hannah couldn't believe what she was seeing. Fresh bread that smelled like the bakeries on her homeworld. Vegetable soup with spices she recognized from her grandmother's kitchen. Even sweet cakes for the children, made with synthetic honey that tasted better than anything she remembered. Her son took a bite of the bread and started crying. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally having enough to eat. Hannah looked at the human relief worker who had brought the food and tried to find words to express her gratitude. "Why?" she finally asked in broken standard galactic. "Why do you help us? We have nothing to give you." The human, a young man named Jun Ho, smiled and knelt down to offer the little boy a piece of candy. "Because you're hungry," he said simply. "That's reason enough." Back on the Genesis, Captain Dong-Su was receiving reports from all his shuttles. Every refugee ship was being supplied not just with immediate food, but with cooking equipment and ingredients that would last for weeks. "Captain," Sujin called out, "we're getting a transmission from the planet's surface. It's President Taiwan of the Kalar government." The main screen showed an alien leader who looked exhausted and defeated. His people had been among the first hit by the blight, and they had watched their entire agricultural system collapse in a matter of months. "Captain Dong-Su," President Taiwan began, his voice shaking. We don't understand what's happening. Your people have no reason to help us. We can't pay you back. We have nothing valuable to offer." "Why are you doing this?" Dong-Su thought about how to answer. How could he explain that humanity didn't help people because they expected something in return? How could he make an alien understand that seeing others suffer was painful to humans, even if those others were complete strangers? "President Taiwan," he said finally, "you asked for help and you're hungry. That's reason enough. No one should have to choose between feeding their children and feeding themselves. No parent should have to watch their family starve when other people have surplus food." The alien leader was quiet for a long moment. "But surely you want something. Trade agreements, mining rights, political alliances." "No, sir," Dong-Su replied. "We want you to be fed. We want your children to be healthy. We want your people to have hope for the future. If you're grateful and want to be friends with humanity afterward, that's nice. But it's not required." President Taiwan stared at the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Captain, in all my years in politics, I have never encountered a species that gave without expecting something in return." "Then you haven't met enough humans," Dong-Su said with a smile. As the relief operation continued into the night, word spread throughout the refugee fleet about what was happening. Human shuttles weren't just delivering food, they were bringing hope. Children who had been weak and listless were laughing and playing again. Parents who had given up were talking about the future. Dr. Na Young reported to the captain that they had successfully fed over 2 million beings in the first 12 hours. With 0 incidents of food poisoning or allergic reactions, the cultural adaptations had worked perfectly. "Captain," Commander In-ho said, "we're receiving requests from refugee ships throughout the sector. Word is spreading that Earth has arrived with food. We're getting coordinates for stranded vessels, requests for planetary surface drops, and inquiries about long-term agricultural assistance." Dong-Su looked at the tactical display showing the location of every hungry person in the sector. There were billions of them, scattered across dozens of worlds and thousands of ships. "Send a message to Admiral Kim on the Abundance," he ordered. "Tell her that Phase 1 is complete. All immediate hunger in this area has been addressed. Request permission to begin Phase 2, permanent agricultural restoration." As the message was sent, Dongsu looked out at the refugee ships that were now glowing with warm light as families shared their first real meals in weeks. Children's laughter could be heard over the communication channels as they tasted sweets and treats that human food specialists had created just for them. For the first time since the blight had started, the Talon sector felt like it might have a future after all. Major Seung-ho had been staring at computer screens for 18 hours straight, and his eyes were starting to burn. As the intelligence officer aboard the flagship Abundance, he had been trying to figure out how the blight had spread so fast and so completely. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Natural diseases didn't move in perfect patterns. They didn't target specific soil bacteria while leaving everything else alone, and they definitely didn't hit agricultural worlds in such a strategic order that would cause maximum starvation with minimum advance warning. "Admiral," he called out to Bora Kim, who was reviewing reports from the relief operations, "I think we have a problem." Admiral Kim walked over to his station, her face serious. In the past 3 days, her fleet had successfully fed over 50 million refugees and begun agricultural restoration on 12 dead worlds. But Seung-ho's expression told her that their troubles were just beginning. "What did you find, Major?" Seung-ho pulled up a holographic display, showing the pattern of blight infections across the Talon sector. "Ma'am, look at this timeline. The disease didn't spread randomly. It hit the agricultural centers first, then the backup food production worlds, then the emergency reserve storage facilities. Someone planned this." Dr. Haijin Park looked up from her research station where she had been studying blight samples. "Major Seung-ho is right, Admiral. I've been analyzing the biological structure of this plague. It's definitely artificial. But more than that, it's specifically designed to target the soil bacteria that most galactic species depend on. Whoever made this knew exactly how alien agriculture works." Admiral Kim felt a cold feeling in her stomach. "Are you telling me that someone deliberately starved billions of people?" "Yes, ma'am," Seung-ho replied. "And I think I know who. I've been monitoring communications from the Outer Rim territories. There's been increased military activity from something called the hegemony. They're a collection of aggressive species that have been expanding toward the galactic core for decades." He pulled up intelligence reports that showed massive fleet movements. "The hegemony has a history of conquering weakened civilizations. They've used engineered famines before, but never on this scale. Admiral, I think the Talon sector was supposed to collapse completely before anyone could mount a relief effort." Admiral Kim studied the reports with growing anger. She had seen war before, had fought pirates and raiders who attacked merchant ships. But this was something else entirely. This was using starvation itself as a weapon of conquest. "How many people would have died if we hadn't intervened?" she asked quietly. Dr. Heejin looked at her data tablets. "Conservative estimates suggest total population collapse across 17 star systems within 1 year. We're talking about the deaths of approximately 40 billion sentient beings." The bridge went silent. 40 billion. More people than had ever lived on Earth throughout all of human history. "Admiral," Commander Yu Jin called from the tactical station, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown fleet. They're approaching from the galactic rim. Put it on screen." The main display showed the most terrifying alien Admiral Kim had ever seen. It looked like a giant insect, but one that had been twisted into something purely predatory. Its multiple eyes glowed with cold intelligence, and its mouth was filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Human Admiral," the creature spoke in perfect standard galactic. "I am War Marshal Grothan of the Hegemony Defense Force. You have interfered with natural selection. Your actions are prolonging the suffering of inferior species that deserve extinction." Admiral Kim stepped forward, her voice steady despite her rage. "War Marshal, I've studied your species' history. You've used starvation as a weapon for centuries, conquering worlds too weak from hunger to fight back. But you made one critical error. And what error is that, human? You tried to starve people under humanity's protection." Grothan's multiple eyes focused on her with predatory interest. "Protection? You speak as if you have some claim to these weaklings. They are not your species. They offer you nothing of value. Why do you waste resources on creatures destined for extinction?" Admiral Kim's response was broadcast not just to the hegemony fleet, but to every ship in the sector. She wanted everyone to understand exactly where humanity stood. War Marshal, let me explain something about humans. We believe that every being has the right to eat. Every child deserves to grow up without hunger. Every parent should sleep at night knowing their family will not starve. These aren't privileges that have to be earned. They are basic rights that we will defend with every ship, every weapon, and every life if necessary. She paused, looking directly into Grothan's alien eyes. You've built your entire civilization on the idea that might makes right. That the strong deserve to take everything while the weak deserve nothing. But you're about to learn that there's a different kind of strength. Grothan's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Humans, you have perhaps 300 agricultural vessels. I have 2,000 warships, each one capable of destroying planets. Your idealism will not protect you from reality. You're right about one thing, Admiral Kim replied. We are idealistic. We believe in crazy things like making sure everyone has enough to eat. We think that helping strangers is more important than conquering them. We actually care about beings we've never met simply because they asked for help. She smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. But you made a mistake in thinking that makes us weak. You see, War Marshal, a species that spends all its time figuring out how to destroy things never learns how to build them. You've spent centuries perfecting weapons. We've spent centuries perfecting life. Admiral, Commander Yu Jin whispered urgently. The hegemony fleet is powering weapons. They're preparing to attack. Admiral Kim nodded. All harvest ships continue relief operations. Do not stop feeding people because someone wants to start a war. Defense Protocol 7 is now in effect. Grothan's image leaned forward. You would dare fight us while conducting your pathetic relief mission? You will divide your attention and lose everything. War Marshal, Admiral Kim said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. You still don't understand. We're not dividing our attention. Feeding people and protecting them from bullies like you, that's the same mission. As the hegemony fleet moved into attack position, Admiral Kim thought about all the children who were finally eating real meals again, all the parents who could sleep without worrying about their families starving, all the worlds that were beginning to bloom once more. Some things were worth fighting for, and if the hegemony wanted to test whether humanity's agricultural ships could defend the people they had come to save, they were about to get a very unpleasant surprise. All ships, Admiral Kim broadcast to her fleet. Remember why we're here. We came to feed the hungry and heal the dying. Anyone who tries to stop us from doing that job is going to learn exactly how seriously humans take their responsibilities. The battle for the future of the Talon sector was about to begin. But it wouldn't be fought just with weapons and shields. It would be fought with the fundamental question of what civilized beings owed to each other, and whether the strong had any duty to protect the weak, and humanity had already decided which side of that question they were on. The Battle of the Abundant Fields began when 3 hegemony destroyers tried to blast the harvest ship Prosperity as it delivered seed packets to restore the dead farmlands of Kalar 7th. Captain Dong-Su was in the middle of explaining to local farmers how to plant Earth-compatible crops when the attack sirens started. Screaming, "All civilians to emergency shelters," he announced. Calmly over the ship's communication system, agricultural operations will continue as scheduled. The hegemony commanders had expected to destroy a helpless cargo vessel filled with farming equipment. What they found instead challenged every assumption they had about human capabilities. The Prosperity looked like a peaceful ship covered in growing plants and painted with symbols of wheat and corn. But when the enemy weapons fired, hidden panels slid away to reveal defensive systems that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Point defense arrays emerged from what had looked like grain storage silos. Energy shields powered by the same fusion reactors that ran the food synthesis labs blazed to life, deflecting the hegemony's most powerful weapons like they were annoying insects. Defense Grid Alpha, engage hostile targets, Captain Dong-Su ordered while watching his agricultural teams continue loading seed packets into supply shuttles. Cargo Bay 7 continue distribution operations. No one stops eating because someone wants to start a war. The hegemony fighters swooped in expecting easy targets. Instead, they found themselves facing defensive systems that had been refined through centuries of protecting valuable agricultural shipments from space debris, pirates, and asteroid storms. Every human cargo ship that carried food, had to survive journeys through the most dangerous parts of space, and Earth's engineers had built them accordingly. Admiral Kim watched the battle from the Bridge of the Abundance while coordinating relief efforts across the entire sector. Her tactical display showed hegemony ships surrounding each of her vessels, but the human ships were holding their positions and continuing their humanitarian missions. "Admiral," Commander Yujin reported, "the hegemony fleet is having trouble penetrating our defenses. Their weapons are designed to overwhelm military shields, but our agricultural ships were built to protect delicate cargo in hostile environments. Our defensive systems are actually more advanced than most warships." "Continue relief operations," Admiral Kim ordered, "and prepare to deploy the ecosystem restoration platforms." Dr. Hee-jin looked up from her station with excitement. "Admiral, are you sure? We've never tested those systems in combat conditions." "Doctor, what are those platforms designed to do?" "They're automated terraforming factories that can restore dead worlds by seeding them with Earth-compatible life forms. They're meant to turn lifeless planets into gardens." Admiral Kim smiled grimly. "Then let's show the hegemony what happens when they threaten our gardens, War Marshal." Grothan watched in growing frustration as his fleet's most powerful weapons failed to damage the human agricultural ships. His species had conquered dozens of civilizations by overwhelming them with superior firepower, but these humans seemed to absorb his attacks without even slowing down their relief operations. "Impossible," he snarled into his communications device. "They're farming ships. How are they defending themselves against our battle fleet?" One of his subordinates, an insectoid warrior named Vrash, approached his command station. "War Marshal, our weapons are having no effect. And, sir, there's something else. Long-range sensors are detecting massive objects approaching from behind the human fleet." Grothan's multiple eyes focused on the tactical display. 3 enormous structures, each one the size of a small moon, were moving slowly toward the battle zone. They didn't look like weapons or warships. They looked like machines. Giant, complex machines covered in what appeared to be growing plants. "What are those things?" Grothan demanded. His answer came when the first ecosystem restoration platform reached the edge of the battle zone. Suddenly, streams of microscopic particles began flowing toward the hegemony ships. At first, the alien commanders thought they were under attack by some kind of biological weapon. They were partially right. The streams contained terraforming nanites, tiny machines designed to spread Earth-compatible life throughout dead star systems. But instead of targeting empty planets, the nanites began attaching themselves to the hulls of the hegemony warships. Within minutes, Grothan's flagship was sprouting wheat. Corridors that had been filled with weapon systems were suddenly growing cornstalks. The bridge where he commanded his fleet was becoming a vegetable garden. "What is this madness?" Grothan screamed as vines began growing around his command chair. Admiral Kim's voice came over the communication system, broadcasted to every ship in both fleets. "War Marshal, you said that our idealism wouldn't protect us from reality. But you forgot something important. Reality includes the fact that life is stronger than death, that growth is more powerful than destruction, and that people who know how to make things bloom will always defeat people who only know how to make things die." The terraforming nanites were relentless. Hegemony weapon systems shut down as their power conduits became root systems for tomato plants. Fighter craft crashed as their pilots' control panels disappeared under growing flowers. The most feared war fleet in the galaxy was being transformed into a flying garden. Grothan found himself trapped in his command chair by rapidly growing bean vines. His bridge crew was running in panic as sunflowers sprouted from their control stations. Through the growing forest of plants, he could see the human agricultural ships still delivering food to refugee vessels, completely ignoring the chaos around them. "We surrender," he finally screamed into his communicator. "We yield! Please stop this madness." Admiral Kim's response was immediate. "All terraforming operations standby mode. War Marshal Grothan, you and your fleet are now under humanitarian quarantine. Any ship that attempts to harm civilians will be converted into a botanical garden." As the immediate battle ended, the true scope of humanity's response became clear. The hegemony had expected to fight traditional warships with conventional weapons. Instead, they had encountered something completely outside their experience, a civilization that had turned the very forces of life into tools of defense. Dr. Hyejin was practically dancing with excitement at her station. "Admiral, the nanites worked perfectly. Not only did we stop the hegemony fleet, but we've actually improved their ships. The plants growing on their hulls will provide fresh air and food for their crews. We've accidentally solved their long-term nutrition problems. 6 months later, Ambassador Kyun-woo stood before a very different galactic council. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, all of whom had come to witness the signing of the Terran Agricultural Protection Accords. The Talon sector had been completely transformed. Every world that had been dying from the blight was now producing more food than before the plague had started. Refugee fleets had become agricultural teaching vessels, spreading Earth's farming techniques throughout the galaxy. Even the hegemony had changed. War Marshal Grothin, whose flagship was now a beautiful floating garden, had formally requested Earth's help in converting his empire's war economy into an agricultural one. His people, who had spent centuries conquering others for resources, had discovered that it was much easier to simply grow what they needed. The humans taught us something that our species had forgotten, Kyun-woo addressed the assembly. They showed us that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy, but the ability to create abundance. Every child in the Talon sector now goes to sleep with a full stomach. Every parent knows their family will have enough to eat tomorrow. Every world that was dying is now blooming with life. High Counselor Vrex, the lizard-like being who had once dismissed human capabilities, rose to speak. The Terran Confederation has demonstrated a form of power that our civilizations never understood. They conquered not through force but through generosity. They won not by taking but by giving. And they have made the entire galaxy safer by proving that cooperation produces better results than conquest. Dr. Hyejin, now serving as Earth's agricultural ambassador, activated a holographic display showing the transformed Talon sector. Where once there had been dead worlds and refugee fleets, now there were verdant planets and trade convoys carrying surplus food to every corner of the galaxy. The harvest fleet remains on permanent deployment, she announced to the assembly. Any world, any species, any being that faces hunger need only ask. Humanity's answer will always be the same. We will feed you, we will teach you to feed yourselves, and we will make sure that no one ever uses starvation as a weapon again. As the council session ended, representatives from dozens of species approached the human delegation, but they weren't coming to negotiate military alliances or trade agreements. They were coming to ask a simple question that would reshape galactic civilization. Can you teach us to grow food like you do? Admiral Kim, who had been promoted to head of Galactic Agricultural Security, smiled as she watched the aliens eagerly discussing farming techniques with her crew. 6 months ago, these same species had barely cared that billions were starving. Now they were competing to see who could implement Earth's agricultural methods most effectively.